talk about challenges. We want to answer any questions that you may have. So hopefully we can get through a lot of the content that we have. And I don't know if you are on the Cultivated Instagram page, you're gonna there's a link in there that you can follow along the presentation. So we're at Cultivated Genetics, and there's a really cool presentation on there, which will lead to a flow page link, which will give you all the irrigation strategies, all the genomic fingerprinting of these genetics. Yes, I said genomic fingerprinting. We are literally dropping clones that have a DNA fingerprint. So what's cool about this, shout out to MyFlora DNA, we're stopping the rename game. I'm tired of that shit. People are not getting the credit for what they deserve, and ultimately we just want to make sure that somebody has something unique. So the way that the DNA fingerprint works is you can actually send in a little flower sample, whether it's dried or live material, and they'll validate it against the DNA of these genetics that we're dropping today. So this is a really cool opportunity for breeders, for seed makers, for pheno hunters. This is IP, guys, and we want to be able to pass along that value to you guys as well. So yes, we realize people are probably going to mom these clones out, and we're happy that you are. You know that you have the validation behind that, so now you can have some security knowing that you're bringing in something, you're investing into these genetics, so we really appreciate that as well. We couldn't be here without you guys. So, thank you. Without further ado, let's get rocking. I'm gonna get one raffle going because we got some awesome giveaways here, guys. I wanna give a shout out to our booth sponsors, General Hydroponics, Gavita, Hawthorne. Thank you guys so much for always coming through, always supporting. I know you've got a major footprint here at the Kush Alley Cultivation putting out this heat, so thank you guys. So GH has been super stoked about giving off some of these Flora Pro samples as well. So we're gonna be doing 3 different giveaways where you're gonna win a clone, you're gonna win a run of this GH Flora Pro, you're gonna get Kayakor cocoa bags, which is a 5-inch or a 6-inch. This is a compressed, super clean cocoa. I'm blown away with how clean it is. If you've ran cocoa, you've probably experienced some challenges with drybacks and stratification issues, whereas some of the moisture content will be all over the place. Check these out. These are legit. They're super clean. They wash them like 6 or 7 times. It's ridiculous. But shout out to Kayakor. So thank you guys for providing that. Also, shout out to LA Garden Supply. They gave some dope-ass grinders, really cool lighters over there, and also dome. If you buy a clone, you're going to be getting a dome tray and a clone dome as well. So that's under the AgPro 360 line. Really cool stuff there. And for the grand prize, you're not only getting the GH, the Kaya, 1 each of all 3 flavors clones, you're also going to be getting an Arroyo Go system. If you're not sure what the Arroyo Go system is, this is your opportunity to actually start measuring and managing your farm. You're getting a Teros 1, which has 2 sensors that goes into your substrate. You're getting the climate station, and you're getting the data, the subscription. This is honestly the best way that you can start to level up your game, because when we're going to jump on this panel discussion and start talking about crop steering and how to bring out the best genetic expression of these genetics, it's going to come back to this. You cannot manage without measurement. So shout out to Arroyo. Really appreciate you guys giving us that Arroyo Go for the grand prize winner. So hopefully we can get you guys going in the right direction. Without further ado, drum roll, please. Oh, we don't have the drummer over here. Damn. All right. Yes, there we go. Thank you. So our first winner for 1 clone, the GH and the Kaya, number 081. 081. Where we at? Oh, all right. If you're not here, you're missing. Check your tags, please. 081, going once, going twice. Moving on. Raffle ticket number 029. 029. All right, we're going to keep rolling. And FYI, people that buy flour get raffle tickets, so you're increasing your chance to win if you buy flour. Shout out to Kush Alley. There's a lot of cool flower specials going on too, so that's why there's a bunch of raffle tickets in here. Unfortunately, if they're not here to participate, moving on. Raffle ticket number 048. 048. My man, got it. There we go. Name and where you're from, sir.
Adam, Prohibited Farms.
Adam, thank you, brother. How long have you been cultivating for?
Almost 20 years.
Get ready to grow these seeds. Appreciate you, Adam. See me after this. We're gonna get you laced up. All right, guys. Let's do it. Let's get on to the panel. I'd like to introduce our first panelist, Mr. Chad Salute, Director of Cultivation for Kush Alley Maven Genetics. Round of applause for Chad, please. Chad, appreciate you being here, man.
Thank you.
Come on in. Next on the panel, we have Mr. Danny Nugent. Danny, Kush Alley, General Manager, the man that keeps the plan. Thanks for being on, Danny.
Thank you, thank you.
What? Start? I have to start it? Oh, I guess I have to start the live. Sorry, guys. Tony, you might have to go on my laptop to start that. I can't do it from here. Gotta love live events, right? Okay. Bear with me just one sec, guys.
Facilities manager, cultivation manager? Oh, we're still trying to figure out your title.
General.
Aren't you the director of cultivation for Kush Alley?
You are.
Not anymore.
You're the director of managers. What is it?
I'm the managing director.
Managing
That's the
director.
title we gave them.
Managed directors.
They try to make me regional. Oh, regional? You're the regional director. Like, yeah, because I don't want nothing to do with that fucking farm.
What?
I don't want nothing to do with that fucking farm.
You would want a piece of that.
I did.
Charles. Charles.
I did want a fucking. Not with him there. I see. For sure.
All right, thank you for your patience. And last but not least, I'd love to introduce Mr. Phil Moss with Good Greens. Welcome to the stage, Phil. Phil is our genetics artist at Good Greens. Unfortunately, Joe Cimino couldn't be here. He's out in Boston crushing it, launching Your Highness. Welcome to the stage, Phil. All right. My name's Sergio Bacazzo, aka the Custodian. I'm with Cultivated Genetics. Started that nursery in 2019, and I had the pleasure of working with Chad and Danny very early on, probably like early 2020 or something. And this relationship was really cool because we held ourselves to a higher standard. We thought we were doing the right thing until we found out that we weren't. And so Chad has a very kind but candorous approach to telling me that we messed up. You sent me some plants and they were sick. Okay, tell me more, Chad. Like I need to understand what was the problem. And so from that moment on, I realized that there's good people in this industry that want to help. We all want to grow together. We want to fix the challenges to the solutions, and that was a really cool moment for us, Chad. So I appreciate that. Yeah, man. But what's really cool about this is, being in the genetic space, it's a very collaborative opportunity to work with some really cool people. So that's what this is about. I had the pleasure of working with Phil and Joe at Good Greens. They bought some clones and invited me to come check them out at their farm in downtown LA. And I have never seen some plants, like they were ridiculously stacked. I hadn't seen these plants perform to that degree. So we quickly forged a relationship. And, again, it came back to kind candor, right? You guys were telling me that there were certain genetics that just wouldn't be able to get pushed for commercial viability. That's a big piece, guys. That's why we're here talking about commercial viability. So it doesn't matter if you're growing in small batch or 1,000 lights, these genetics that we hunted and selected here at Kush Alley are commercially viable, right? So we want to talk about the nuances of candies, right? We understand that these things are finicky. Candies typically have a lot of intersex traits, and sometimes they're tough to get yield out of, right? So we want to be able to help pass along some information around how to properly crop steer your candies. I know we've had a couple of discussions over the past year. LCG Battle Royale champs over here at Kush Alley. You guys killed it with your LCG, but that comes back to full circle, right? Quality. We're talking about quality and also pushing the plant to that balance. Where is that balance between genetic potential of yield and quality? So the takeaway, the purpose why we want to do this for you guys is to make sure that you understand that there's certain thresholds that you got to stay within. So I mentioned that there's a link inside the handle of Cultivated Genetics. So if you go in there and click on that, there's a presentation link that's actually specifically for what we're going through here. There's a second link in there under the Cultivated Flow page that is irrigation strategies. They're extremely detailed. So if you start looking at that, I'm talking about what is the runoff pH? What is my under LED and HPS? What are the different targets that you got to be within? Where's my EC at during the generative stacking phase, during the vegetative bulking phase, and the generative ripening phase? So we built that program specifically so we can pass it along. We've been waiting for this day, guys. So the candies have been grown at Kush Alley for probably, maybe 9-10 months roughly since we started hunting them. So they've gone through multiple commercial cycles already. So we've understood the nuances. I've had the pleasure of growing them up in Sacramento at the Powerhouse facility as well. And that's what we do, right? We get them off into the commercial space. We understand a little bit more about the genetics. And once we got the level of confidence, it's time to release them. So that's a big part around why it takes so long. Phil, when did we start the candy project? How long ago? Maybe like 16, 18 months ago, roughly?
Hunting about a year and a half ago.
About a year and a half. So it's a process, right? Anybody can make seeds. Anybody can make seeds, right? I've tried to make seeds and I failed at it. But when you start going down the pathway of like why you want to go down the hunting goals, right? That's one of the biggest purposes. What are you hunting for? You can put fire on fire and expect fire, but why wouldn't you just grow one of the parents and just improve that, right? And so if you're not improving the parent, what's the point? What are you looking for? So with these three candies, the Dragon Glass, which is Black Runs times Good Greens candy, the Lip Smackers, which is the LCG times the Animal Cookies times Good Greens candy, and the Residual Sugar, which is the Glitter Bomb times Good Greens candy. We believe that these are all improvements to their parents. So that was our intention. That was our hunting goal, improving the parents. And again, commercial viability. All that means, guys, is that we're trying to give you guys the best opportunity to succeed with these genetics, and they fucking smoke. The aromas translate to taste. That's why we're so piped on these. So I'm gonna pause there for a moment. Phil, I'm gonna pass the mic to you. If you can just give a brief background on the Good Greens candy, the pollination project, just high level, why you guys did that project.
So as Sergio said, we've been working with him for a long time, since right around the beginning of his nursery as Good Greens, just like how Kush Alley did, because he was receptive to feedback, and it's easy to work with people when they're receptive to feedback. And a lot of your favorite breeders are not as receptive to feedback. They are not concerned with what the customer wants as much as they're concerned as what they want to make, which is great as an artist, but not great when you need people to support your work and grab paintings. So really this project was trying to inject what people call candy, or one level above candy, like Candy Plus, into all of these moms that you see on the list, and really just choosing the moms by starting with plant characteristics that I found would be useful. So like stem strength is a big one, which Glitter Bomb has, which it passes off to its offspring. And then, the LCG Z Animal, it has Z terps, but it doesn't grow like a Z, because anyone who's ever tried Z knows what that's like. And yeah, the hard work, a lot of the hard work comes in selection. It doesn't necessarily come in the pollination. And to fast track selection, there are some tricks you can use. So a lot of people select off of how does it look when the weed is finished, which is not a great metric if you're expecting to run many lights of a plant. A lot of the concern should be, how does this plant grow, and why does it grow this way, and how can we get those traits to pass on and replicate. And so one trick that I used is, when you make your own seeds, which I encourage everyone to do because you can, when you hunt them, you can kill as many as you want when you look for the good ones. And if you're not stingy with hunting your own seeds, you can kill off 95, 93%, 2 standard deviations worth of work. And when you then pass on the winners of the original just veg hunt, they're much more likely to have traits which Chad and Danny probably find valuable, like heat tolerance or or pest and mold resistance, baked into the genetic coding of the plant. Again, another reason why I like working with Sergio. He gets labs to decode the actual genetic sequencing, which means we can know the efficacy of the trait passed through and not just our eye test or our smoke test or the bag test. And yeah.
Appreciate that, Phil. And that's true. Like, we now have access to some really cool tools, right? Like, science is our friend. There's a lot of opportunities to really lean into that, which is why you shouldn't be afraid to try something new, right? We want to push the boundaries. We want to understand a lot of the nuances, because Danny, I want to lean into you on this one. Like, you guys kill off a lot of herms, right? You go through the process. You have to pop something. Let me back up. Before you guys even pop seeds, right? Like, you guys have a goal of the flavor profile or whatever it is that you're trying to put into the brand, right? Like, you obviously have some bulk sales, but there's also a brand play here. So why do you select certain packs to run? Let's start there.
I'm gonna say that a lot of the seeds that we do choose are something that is it's going to be appealing, something that we've been looking for, something that's different, but yet still desirable. It has to check all the boxes when we're looking for something. And again, we don't know whether or not that's going to be. So we want to get the traits, and we want to get them out right away because it takes a lot of time. So what we want to do is we want to get them out, flower them, and see where it's out. But of course, we got to take our clones and get the representation, because we all know that after 1, 2, 3 runs of this, the representation changes. We're always seeing a different representation each time, and that's the most important thing, is because you'll see something and you're like, oh, it's okay, and then you're like, okay, let's try it again, and then something pops out of it. It changes. It strikes something different, and you'll see different protein, and it's just different each time. So get a couple runs, and then we'll see what we're working with.
Now, Chad, let's talk a little bit about some of those nuances you guys have seen with these three candies in particular. From the first initial pass through, right? The first side table, right? Walk us through a little bit of that process, how you start the pheno hunt processing before it actually goes on a production table.
Yeah, so just to follow up on what Danny was saying, it's when we're selecting seeds or what breeders we're going to go through, you want to do your research on the breeder themselves, because there is a lot of pollen chuckers out there that are starting with genetics that aren't commercially viable for what we need. We don't want herms to happen. We need the structure. We need the resistance to PM and to botrytis. So that starts first, right? Knowing where we're getting our seeds from. But as we go through the genetic, the selection of the pheno, we'll see a pop rate. You know, when you're buying 10 seeds and only 3 are popping, that's a problem, right? So that's our feedback we give to the breeders like Sergio or to whoever we're going to buy seeds from, to understand that, hey, we're getting viable seeds popping. Once those go through, real estate's really expensive in the cultivation, so we can't just pop every breeder's seeds. We have to have some insurance that what we're popping, we're going to find a winner or two, because it's a lot of resources we have to put in when we actually use a spot of our cultivation for pheno hunting. So, you know, we're taking this risk that we could be making money off of from something that's already in the market that everybody else has. And, you know, we think we grow things differently, and we've got Prohibited Farms, we got Chris from Ball Flaming Farm, we got Drew over there. Like, we have the same strain. We're going to express this thing a little bit different. So, you know, that's cool and all, but we want something fresh, right? Something that nobody else has. So that's the part where we're always going to be pheno hunting. I'm sure you guys are always going to be pheno hunting, but when we get it into the veg, we're looking at that vigor, the clone rate popping, how many clones are coming through, the structure we can get out of our veg. Our veg is condensed. We're like 10 to 12 days flipping into flower. So commercially, we need these plants to have that vigor to get us to where we need to be in the flower situation. And then once we get the flower, you know, it is one of those watching it day to day, understanding the height that grows. We have some tiers that are 42 inches tall. We're vertically growing in all these rooms now, so we're growing really short stacked LEDs. So it has to be conducive for that. You know, we can't grow a strain that's going to flower for 12 weeks. We need something 9 to 10 weeks, maybe even shorter, and something that is structurally that can grow under that. So these are all the things we look along the way, you know, and we'll see it on the first iteration of clones that come through. And like Danny says, you know, that's where our selection process happens. How did it perform in veg, in the flower, looking at it throughout the flower, and then going through our selection process there. And that doesn't stop there because, yeah, it grew great the first time, but that genetic evolves. We believe it evolves in our cultivation. We believe it's going to evolve in your cultivation. I don't know if it acclimates to everybody differently, but we see not the first generation from a cut, not the second generation cut, but the third generation, we usually get a more pronounced terpene profile out of this thing. So it does take 3 runs just to know if it's going to win, just to know if it's going to stay in the cultivation. And then it goes to a little section, maybe like 20 plants, and then say, hey, commercially, can we grow this thing where it's going to produce what we need to, square foot we need to produce in, and also have that resistance to mold and everything else, and then that expression that everybody wants. Aesthetically, big calyx, you know, low leaf to calyx ratio, something that's easy to trim and defoliate. These are all the things that we went through with Sergio along the way to make sure that commercially viable this genetic is going to be for you. You know, it's a long process. It really is, and that's why when you do get clones from like companies like, you know, like Sergio and Good Greens, that you know that it did a vetting out process first. Super important. We can't waste our cultivation space on something that we're going to run that's not going to sell.
I love that you touched on the selection process starting in veg, right? If it doesn't fit your cycle, it's not going to work commercially, right? Being able to understand how that vigor, how that vertical growth, what is the stretch factor, right? A lot of people are still topping plants, not saying topping plants is bad, but there's something that vertical growth that you don't want to slow down. If it's a 3x stretcher, run with it. Now that just means that you're flipping that plant shorter. And what happens when you start shortening up your veg time? You might be able to get another run in that year, right? Every single day in a commercial environment is critical. So when we start looking at selection through veg, like I'm so happy you brought that up, because there's so many cultivars that probably don't deserve to be in the commercial setting because of that veg factor. So of course we do what we can because the terps are popular, but you know, that's what's cool about the lip smackers in particular, right? It's got that Z forward candy terp, a little bit of light gas on the back, but it's super sweet at the palate. And anybody that's grown like the traditional Skittles knows that it's a very challenging plant to grow. One of the biggest factors about that is trying to find that flavor, that terp profile, because when it hits. And we feel that we found something really special in the lip smackers. So I think I was overhearing Phil earlier talk to somebody at the booth about the lip smackers. Like, it still has that sweet candy taste, but it still has velocity too. A lot of the runs, crosses, or anything that just has sweet terps typically doesn't have that experience that you're looking for, right? It doesn't have that punch, that velocity factor. So again, if it's not going through your veg process, or if it's not giving you the strengths and qualities throughout that veg, then yeah, it doesn't deserve to make the cut. I'm sorry. It's just not going to fit. But also a lot of the things that there's a really unique, something critical in structure that I look at is stem strength. Stem strength is one of the things that gets overlooked frequently, and specifically because that correlates anecdotally that I've seen that you can actually steer that plant much harder with higher EC and higher drybacks. Why is that important? Well, we're trying to create node sites. We're trying to stress that plant out. So if it has a stronger stem, then you're going to be able to generally drive that and actually get a little bit more out of it, because it might not have that stress factor for maybe it's going to increase the viral lutein, hopslate, and viroid, or it might trigger some intersex traits. So again, I love looking for something that's got that stem strength, and residual sugar has that 5 out of 5 stem strength.
That's the one I like.
Yeah.
Cultivator's dream to grow.
It really is, man, and it's a 3x stretch. Like, it definitely takes off in veg. So, that was a really special selection. Obviously, she's got the glitter bomb traits, right? She's got the trichome density. She's got that bulbous structure. She looks beautiful in a pack. Yeah, that's a special selection. So it's everything that you loved about the glitter bomb with candy terps. It's like, okay, perfect. Like, that's why it's in this collection right now. So, one of the things that we wanted to make sure that people were comfortable with was like the stretch factors. I can't stress how important it is to understand what a 1x, a 2x, and a 3x stretch factor is. That determines when you should be flipping to flour, right? So the lip smackers and the residual sugar, lip smackers, I would say it's 2.5x stretch. Everything's a bit environmentally dependent. What kind of lights you're using is also very, critical in that stretch factor. Your DLI in veg is so important. So if you're not matching your DLI in veg, and what are you doing in veg to actually get it ready for that flour flip, most people are missing the target on that. Your daily light interval? So how do you measure the daily light interval? That's a great question. So the daily light interval is calculated by how much photons that plant is receiving while the lights are on. Okay, so if you have it set at 300 par, you multiply that by 18 hours. So 300 times 18 is, anybody? 5,400? My man. So you have a DLI of 5,400 at 300 par. So if you start trickling it back up, because what are you trying to do when you flip it to flour, right? You want to match it. That's why when you're starting to actually go into flour and you're not giving that plant enough food, it's not uptaking, you're not giving enough photons, you're not giving it the right environments, especially running LEDs, right? Like, you guys are running LED double stacks. I'm sure you're running across this all the time. If your environment's not hot enough or humid enough, that plant's not going to uptake. It's going to yellow out. You're going to have super saturated rock wool, right? You guys are in the deltas or 4x6s, jumbos. You're going to run into some very heavy plots in there, or heavy plants, and they're not going to be very happy. So when you calculate that DLI, and you just got to make sure like they are getting enough to go into flour. And that's another factor about these 3 cultivars, is that they are prepared to take it in veg. Very strong plants in veg.
And that's important, because when we come out of veg, we don't want any slowdown. You want to flip, have no regression of the plant, be able to push it from the start. 300 we're going to push around 500 par in flour to be at 6,000 DLI. So these are things, and then the environment, keeping that environment continuous from veg to flour. So there's just no hiccups along the way. Because we can't have a lost day or two. We have to gain days, whatever way we can.
So the way that I can help with that is by slamming down the veg light as close as I can get it to the tray when I'm popping seeds, and the ones that don't mind that are good candidates for moving on for breeding projects. That's a simple example. A little more complex example is, a lot of people in here have grown plants that drink 2 or 3 times the frequency of other plants, or plants that drink 2 or 3 times less. Well, the more frequent they drink, the more they can ramp up that race car, because it can ping to higher RPMs, which means everything's just moving a little bit faster. And as long as the rest of their system is in line, which it is if you're lucky enough to get to go into these rooms, you'll have amazing success, because now you're driving the car at the limit that it was designed to be driven. And what that does for home growers is it provides a bigger cushion for them. So when they're not taking the car to the limit, they have some room to play with on either side. So it's really amazing when it works out both ways. I picked up this technique, again, from a guy that Sergio introduced me to, who's been breeding in the Emerald Triangle for a long time, and he breeds in an environment that has heavy fog roll in at the end of flower outdoor season. So for 7 generations, he's only worked on plants that can tolerate the fog on his specific property. And I just thought, okay, why aren't we applying this to indoors?
100%. Intentions, right? if you know that you're growing in a super high humid area, you should probably work with the breeders that are breeding in a high humidity area, right? You start going up the coastline here, Carpinteria and Santa Barbara. These guys have like 100% humidity for like 4 or 5 months out of the year, right? You got to be able to understand that these certain genetics or selections have that mold resistance, and that's one of those traits that MyFlora DNA has been able to identify as you start going down the sequencing pattern. So again, it's super cool to have some of these tools that we have access to now. Everybody has access to it now. So if you really want to get down like the true breeding pathway to find those traits, there's tools out there. So I want to take a pause. Time for a raffle. So this second raffle winner. Oh, we got more. All right. So this raffle winner is going to get their choice of one of the 3 clones: the Flora Pro from GH, the Kayakor Coco, ticket number 011. 011. All right, moving on. Ticket number 050. 050. I'm gonna take care of you, but I'm gonna pull another raffle winner. I got you.
Pull mine again.
Buy a lottery ticket, man.
Ticket number 117. 117. Is that you, my man? Oh, you don't have one. Next time. 117. There it is. All right. My man. Perfect.
117.
That's it. Congratulations. Appreciate it, bro. Thank you.
Anytime.
Yeah, we'll get you next time.
Hell yeah.
All right, there's my winner. Sweet. All right, guys. Excellent topics you brought up, guys, because there's a lot of things that get overlooked in the selection process. Now, when I want to dive into like each cultivar specifically. So let's start unpacking some of the traits that you started noticing early on with the residual sugar for starting, Danny. I'd love to lean into this one.
So with the residual sugar, I mean, it's a beautiful strain. I mean, the glitter bomb, the glitter bomb really comes out in it, but it's just so much prettier, and it's like a pungent. It really does define its differences. When we first grew it, probably didn't get the best representation when we first grew it, and when the lip smackers and the dragon glass came out. And it wasn't until we put it in East that one day that you came,
Right.
and we had that one plant, and it really, really looked really nice there, and it stood out.
Mike to chin. Oh no, I was just saying, Mike to chin. It's a little bit easier for there. But no, you're absolutely Mike to chin. Yes, it's a great point that you bring up, Danny, specifically because it stood out, man. Like it definitely had everything that we were looking for, right? It had the bag appeal, it had the structure. She can finish between 8 and 9 weeks, right? Like especially if you're pushing her, like I think 8 weeks is very realistic. 9 weeks, she's done. Like she doesn't want to go more than that.
For sure. I would say 56 days, 58 days, you're going to get the best representation. She's going to finish, and you're not going to have any issues.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, on that, is this working here?
Tony.
On that residual sugar, you don't really have to trim it. It's the leaf to calic ratio is it's all calic, you know. So it's just like plucking off a few fan leaves, and it's already trimmed up for you. So that's why, like, you know, when we grow in the cultivation and the other cultivators, like, you have your favorites because they grow so well, right? And that's one of those strains, like, you can throw it in anywhere and it's going to grow really well. It's a stretcher, hardly any leaves, and just super big frosty calyx. it's really easy to grow. You know, like that's the biggest takeaway I think I get from that residual sugar is all the way down the line, the amount of effort you have to put into it is really low. So when it goes down to the trim room, they're going to power through that. The trimmers are going to be happy because they're going to make their bonuses off that one quick.
It's a great point. So trim, there's certainly a factor when you start looking at trim rates, right? Is it an easy trim or is it a more precise trim, right? Precision trim cultivars, your earnings per light on that specific cultivar are going to be way less. Right? It's going to cost that much more for trim.
I mean, we're looking at it from veg, but in flower and defoliation, you're not having to take leaves off it. You grow the thing without even touching it. So,
go ahead, Phil.
When we were looking through all the phenos, there were some that checked a lot of boxes, but the ratio was not in our favor, and just that alone eliminates plants. So when we release these clones at this point, they've gone through such strenuous testing and selection, it's hard to even explain the amount of visits it takes to get things dialed to where you're picking the specific winner in each cross. And in a bunch of these crosses, we have 2 or 3 that just are in the 92nd percentile, but not the 98th. And none of us feel like those are good enough to really put into the market. So
on that residual sugar, we also have that one up at the farm, and it's outdoor. It's just as good. It grows really well outdoor, and it's really resistant to botrytis, NPM, and it's a dream to grow. You know.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that's great to hear, right? Because a lot of people put these plants out for the full term season, and sometimes these indoor bred and selected candies just don't want to do well outside. They're just weak. So that's a great point. I also want to touch on yield because I really haven't. I get the same question, right? Working in genetics, you get the same questions from every bulk cultivator. I need a heavy yielding candy.
We all do.
It does not exist. Okay, let's just start there. A candy is a candy that has that sweet terp. It's not a heavy yielder. If you're looking at something that's yielding more, it does not have that sweet terp. And please, if you do have something that is a heavy yielding candy, please let me know. I would love to see it. I would love to work with it because obviously that's special. We would love to see what's up with that. But we start talking about irrigation strategies. 60 to 80 grams a square foot is a commercially viable plant, in my opinion. When you start looking at your cost of production and your cost per pound, when you start earning or calculating the earnings per light, you got to be in that 60 to 80 grams per square foot. Otherwise, I don't know how you're paying your bills. I really don't. So all these candies, all 3 of these, fit that 60 to 80 grams per square foot range. So again, every farm is unique. Every farm is different with how they irrigate, what their environmental controls are, what nutrients, what lights. All of that plays a factor. But what I can tell you is that the strategies that we put on that flow code page with the irrigation strategies for these genetics, you should be able to achieve between 60 to 80 grams a square foot, which is why we're talking about measuring your runoff, measuring the shots between your shots, talking about what you're doing with these plants and how you're feeding them. You should be able to achieve these weights. So we haven't even talked about under canopy, but I don't want to get there yet because you guys have a planting density of roughly 7.5 per light. Right? Traditionally, it's like 9 plants per light. Cool. Like that's pretty common in most commercial facilities. Now, when you start decreasing the planting density, what happens? That plant has a little more space. There's more airflow. You're now getting light penetration all the way to that bottom third, right? I'd love to pick your brain a little bit on that. What were the yield increases that you guys saw when you made that transition from 9 a light down to 7.5 a light?
So I don't know as much as a yield increase, but the quality of flower from top to bottom really became more homogeneous. Now, part of our philosophy over here is we don't like to touch the plants. We want to let this plant grow in its natural structure. We don't top, and we try not to defoliate it as much as possible. These are all part of COGS we're trying to eliminate from the cultivation and really just take a clone, plug it in, and be able to flower it and let it grow naturally. And part of that, we have to manipulate plant density. We have to grow smaller plants and less plants in the same square footage that we traditionally would grow in. And that's, when we look at the top of the canopy lighting to the bottom of the canopy lighting, usually we try to achieve about a 20% what we have up top. So if we have 1,000 par up top, 200 par down low, we see a more of the same type of flower that you're going to see up top. You see the purples come through more. Now everybody's moving to under canopy, and we're going to probably too. So it's just a matter of time. But right now we're able with our plant density to get that flower to be the same from up top to bottom. But quality and structure and like the same type of flower from top to bottom, what we saw by decreasing plant density. And then look, at the end of the day, it's less labor. It's less product you're putting in. Why would you grow a plant to take part of that plant off? These are things that we're looking at, looking at the bro science that we used to do before where we'd strip every leaf off. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing because we don't quite understand all the stressors and what things bring out in terp profiles in the plant and everything. It's just not what we do over at Kush Alley and what we're trying to achieve over here. And we're trying to more keep this plant as vigorous as possible all the way from clone to flower and really not manipulate it as much as possible.
Excellent point. We're trying to keep that plant happy and healthy, right? So giving it more airflow, more space to thrive, the quality, right? And now what does that quality mean? Increasing your earnings per light, right? Because you don't have to lower your price on the greens or the smalls or shit that probably doesn't even like make it in. So yeah, you're absolutely right on that. So less plants, better quality, more yield. It's that simple. You can only fight nature so much. Exactly. Now,
So I want to add a little bit to that. Now, plant density will change as we grow our tiers smaller. We will have a higher plant density.
Of course.
And it's as the tiers get bigger, then our plant density can be a little less. The plants fill out a little more. So it does change on tier height.
100% tier height. You just hit it. What is the total cubic foot volume that you're dealing with, right? So that's a major factor. If you got, the light's got 6 feet, right? Cool. Yeah, you've got plenty of space to get it working in there in a tiered system. But if you got a 42, 48-inch box, you're going to want to flip those plants pretty earlier. So yeah, you want to be able to maximize that footprint because if you give the plant enough space in between, cool. That's a great point. That's what I mean. It's not a one-size-fits-all. You just got to understand what variables that you're working with and how to control them. Specifically with these genetics, these all have that same average morphology, but they're not super wide-hipped. Like that's a really good thing for commercial productivity as well. They grow vertically, so that means that they're apically dominant. So that's why, again, I'm not into topping plants, especially with apically dominant plant or selections. They're going to grow straight up, so you can make sure that they have plenty of structure and space in there.
I don't really like. I think the biosecurity as well.
Yeah.
Not topping plants and not taking leaves off and not having us spread diseases. That's a big factor in our garden as well.
100%.
And for you guys who are going to run this in one light or your bedroom or your closet or whatever, the less you touch your plant, the better, just in general. If you don't go in there every day and mess with it, your plant will thank you.
What happens every time you pull off a leaf? Is that a vegetative or a generative signal? Vegetative, right? What are you trying to do to your plant? You're trying to build those node sites. So if you keep ripping those leaves off, you're throwing a vegetative signal, which is going to fuck with your quality, right? You want to keep that stacked. You want to keep that EC stack in there.
But to follow up on that, if you have to defoliate because you also want to control IPM and airflow, so we don't always nail plant density.
Right.
So we will defoliate still. It's just we try not to.
Strategically.
Yes, it's strategic. Yes.
Sorry. You can kind of sum it up by saying we used to decide how many go in a tray by how many plants would physically fit in a tray or how many will fit under this light that we're already paying for the electricity costs. But the strategy over the last 5 or so years has really changed to how the plant density in the tray will affect the quality of the flowers growing on those plants. So it's not really about hitting weight targets by having X number of plants. being X being as many as possible. It's by hitting weight targets, by how can you get the plants that are in your tray to grow the best as possible, and sometimes that comes at reducing plant number. So, the sea of green we all used to do is probably not the best, given the array of data we have access to now.
Phil, I think that's huge in growing quality is being able to deliver lumens to every part of that plant. So you don't have a weak part of that plant that's holding back the rest of that plant. And we definitely have that quality factor on growing these less dense plants. The quality is way better than having something all crowded in and not getting light to that inner canopy and then having disease or something else set in. So I don't have the data or the science behind it, but that's what I see for sure.
Yeah, you notice the plants atrophy when you get them tucked into the trellis too tight, like how we used to grow OGs again because the yield was poor. They don't appreciate that. So you'll see it in the end results if you treat them better.
You talk about OGs. I mean, this is all strain specific. So when it comes to the density, it's based on strain. No two strains are going to be identical, but they're going to be close. So you try to put them together on your zones. But again, it has to do with the strain and what it does. So if you have something that's going to grow squatty, and then you're gonna find that it's going to be a more dense plant. So again, it is strain specific.
Final touching points on any of these three cultivars that you guys want to pass along as far as tips and tricks? Anything come to mind?
I hate IG, but I know it's a necessary evil. If anybody ever wants to hit us up, Kush Alley, about how these cultivars grow and what we're seeing in our system, definitely can hit us up. We're an open book. I know all of our guys like to talk about it. A lot of our cultivation crews here. As far as, we run a clean, sterile system. So it's basic on all this stuff. So the tip I would give you guys is you don't have to add a bunch to these strains to get them to perform well. Any nutrient company out there is going to get you what you need and not have to add a bunch of different additives. We use GH over here, and I feel like they're the best one, but hey, I'm a little biased on that. We get great results with just using their 3-part, no other additives on that.
Amazing. I want to do one more raffle before we go into the grand prize.
I haven't run all of these outdoors. He said he's running the Glitter Bomb Cross right now, and it's doing well. And Dragon Glass. So I haven't run Dragon Glass. I have run the grandparents or the parents outdoors, and they wouldn't make the selections if they didn't do well outdoors. These plants are all geared towards indoor dialed-in rooms, but they are totally fine, and they'll survive, and they're hardy enough to grow in the zone that we live in with everything.
Perfect. All right, third raffle ticket winner is ticket number 120. There it is. All right, we got it. Name and where you're from, sir.
Isaac. I'm from Isaac, and I'm from Simi Valley.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. Congratulations. I'll take your ticket, and we'll get you linked up afterwards. All right, guys. What questions do you have? Anything in particular? Maybe you guys have a nuance in your farm that you might want to talk about. Anything specific to this? Any questions at all you guys want to pick these guys' brains on? My man.
If you guys aren't topping, are you guys pinching, or are you guys influencing the plant in any way?
The question is, if we're not topping the plants, are you going to be super cropping or influencing the plants in any way?
So yes, we have done all those techniques: super cropping, pinching, weaving them in the trellis. Right now, we use a shade claw technique. It's a form of low stress training. We're about making things as efficient as possible in the cultivation. So we use a netting across our canopy that holds all the plants back. Their vertical height, right? And then we'll go through and we'll lay them all down one way, a day so they don't grow through the netting, and then we'll go through and lay them down the other way because we're growing on super short tiers. We wouldn't be able to grow a lot of these plants. Probably if I listened to Sergio a little more on crop steering, I'd probably be able to get their height better. But they grow too tall for how vigorous they are. So we use that technique to hold them down. You can see it on Kush Ali's page. We borrowed it from the floral industry. They use it in poinsettias and stuff like that. But it's basically just a shade cloth, a 20 or 30% shade cloth. Obviously, you want to match that DLI that you have up top and below. So you're taking lumen meters below, and it's physically holding the plant down for those first 3 weeks of stretch.
Your question was about bud site generation, though. If we're not topping or super cropping, how are we getting X amount of buds per plant in general? That's what I'm guessing. So we control that with irrigation. Like, not we, Kush Ali, but Kush Ali does, and we do. Anyone who is worth their salt, can do that.
It's a great question. Thank you. What other questions do you guys have? Okay. Is it time for the grand prize announcement? Shall we do it? All right. Just as a reminder, the grand prize not only gets 3 clones, 1 of each flavor, the GH program, the Kayakor, you get an Arroyo Go system. You can go online right now and buy that thing for like $2,600. So this is a start to something special, guys. And again, shout out to all of our sponsors. This is a really cool program. We have a specific irrigation strategy that we can have you run through Arroyo with these candies. So time for the grand prize. Lucky ticket number 059. My man, he's got it. 059. All right, brother. Name and where you from?
Ruben, work with Ball Family Farms.
Ruben.
Ruben for Ball Family Farms.
Yes, sir. Congratulations, brother. Thank you. Appreciate you. You guys ready for some clone drops? Is that it? Let's do it. Okay, so here's how this is going to work. If you have purchased flour, Gina over here at the table has a black wristband for you. So go show Gina that you purchased flour from Kush Ali. She's going to give you a black wristband. If you have not purchased flour, that's okay. You still have an opportunity to go purchase flour, and that's going to get you in line as well. So first priority is for people that have bought flour from Kush Ali. Got to show the love. Our Pheno hunting partners, again, you guys have done an amazing job. I can't wait to continue this hunt with you guys, which we already know we're doing. So very, really cool. So this has come full circle. We're really proud that we're able to do from the genetic side to the Pheno hunting side to the clone drop side. Like I'm fucking blessed. This is an amazing opportunity for all of us. So thank you. If you have not purchased flour, that's okay. You're going to get a blue wristband from Gina, and that's going to help us understand where you're at in your line prioritization. So what other questions do we have? We good? All right. That's it. I'm Sergio Bacazzo, the custodian, the Connect community. Thank you all for coming out. Let's go get some clones. Appreciate it.